I am Pranav Prasad here from the ILO's Impact Insurance Facility, and I have great pleasure in being connected to all of you now for this webinar on issues around consumer education and agriculture insurance. This webinar, as you can see in the chat box that has been mentioned, is a part of our knowledge sharing collaboration with the Index Insurance Forum of the Global Index Insurance Facility of the World Bank and the Global Action Network supported by the USAID and the BASIS I4 program. The issue of customer education has been around for a long time, and more so for insurance, especially in the rural and agricultural scenario, where it is a very, very new concept and people are still getting used to using financial services, and insurance being amongst the newest ones amongst those financial services. Now, with covers backed by technology and group and portfolio covers becoming more and more prominent, where the insurer and the final customer need not necessarily meet, the mechanism for making the farmer aware assumes even greater importance. So these are some of the issues that we hope to discuss today. And before introducing our wonderful panel to you, let me first familiarize you with the system and the webinar interface that we'll be using today. Aside from the presentation, you should be seeing on your screen a panel that looks like this. You can click on the buttons to hide the panel, etc., but I think the chat box on the right is a great input. You can see everybody who's logged in, and you can even communicate amongst others using the chat box. The audience is by default muted, and that's for us in order to manage the noise and the confusion. But you have any questions or comments, you can tell us about them by typing in the chat box throughout the presentation. And while asking questions, do indicate your organizations so that we can mention it in the Q&A. We'll consolidate all your messages and try and address as many questions as possible during the Q&A. Others, we will certainly get back to you after the webinar. And last but not the least, we'll engage with you even more through polls and requesting your opinions during the webinar. To participate, you'll simply have to click your response, and soon after that, we'll share the results. So please feel free to continue to communicate throughout in the chat box, and we will be in touch with you as the webinar goes by. So without further ado, let me introduce the panelists for today to you. We have Laurie Kamba-Opem from the World Bank Group's International Finance Corporation, IFC, who's the global lead for responsible finance at the World Bank Group. She has worked on a number of projects for developing the concepts of responsible finance and insurance, and we hope to get a good development sector viewpoint from her. We also have on the panel Brenda Wandera, who is the Market and Capacity Building Manager at the International Livestock Research Institute. Brenda has been shepherding the index-based livestock insurance program, which was a unique, innovative program started out in Kenya since its inception in 2009-2010, and has been using a variety of tools for getting in touch and engaging with the customers. So we hope to hear some interesting insights from her too. We also have Naveen Sharma from ICICI Lombard General Insurance. Naveen heads the customer services and the rural portfolio at ICICI Lombard General Insurance and is responsible both for maintaining the bottom line and now driving the rural top lines. And of course, with the scale of agriculture insurance in India, he'll also have some interesting tales to share with us. And of course, you'll have me, Pranav Prasad, chirping in from time to time. So without standing between you and further knowledge that the panelists are waiting to share with you, I'd like to hand you over to the panelists, but before doing that, get all of you engaged and would like to hear from you, why is customer education and engaging with the customers so important? So we have our first audience poll in which we'd like to respond to you, and then we'd like to see how your responses map out to what our panelists say. So we'd like to open the first audience poll. That's why is it important to educate the clients? Is it to achieve better understanding of how to mitigate risk, create higher value for the customers, help providers reach more clients and expand markets, or change behaviors amongst agricultural communities? Please go ahead. We are waiting to hear from you. The poll will be open only for 10 seconds, so please vote at your earliest. Okay, a few more seconds. Thank you. Can we close the poll now? Thank you. So we have an interesting array of responses, and as you can see, most of you feel that education creates value for the clients, and also a lot of you feel that it gives the client a better understanding of how to mitigate risks. So let's see how these things have panned out in the experiences over the years. So let me hand you over to Laurie, who will share the development sector's perspective on developing this entire issue of customer education and responsible insurance. Over to you, Laurie.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you very well, Laurie.
Good morning. Great. Thank you, everybody, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, those were quite interesting results, and particularly for me representing IFC as part of the World Bank Group, how the provider one in particular, there's only one response to that one. So, but this is really very important to us. It's very important to our clients. And as Pranav had mentioned, even more so for the insurance industry, and even more so for the agricultural sector. So it's really, why does this matter? So it's really about who are we reaching, about the consumer, especially the farmers who live in remote, in the poor areas. They come with lower levels of financial education, financial literacy, and even an awareness of basic financial principles. In the Philippines, I'm familiar, for example, that in the rural areas, high school education is really the highest level of education in the provinces. And those that graduate high school and go on to post-secondary really migrate to the city. Otherwise, those members of the family stay and take care of the farm, or they run the farm and the business for the family. So these individuals, are really on the edge of poverty, and and any one single event, any disaster can really push them well under poverty. So who are we reaching? And then what? Insurance is, unlike credit, unlike savings, it's not a tangible product. It's, we're asking these farmers who already have something, very little in their pockets, to pay out upfront for a future promise that that is quite a long horizon, a time horizon for them, and so it's difficult. Typically, it's they have very short time horizons. You don't think till the next day. You don't think till next week. Everything is really driven by the way of life, your products on the farm, and how the seasons that drive your way of life. So why is it even more important? Then it is because for the reason that we need to show the value. This is to mitigate the risks that they face. And how does insurance mitigate that risk? How can you explain, and is that risk even significant? Is it relevant for the market? So putting all of these together, it makes educating our insurance beneficiaries, especially in agri, even more important. I also want to share that from IFC's perspective, this has been really a collaboration. The framework has been a collaboration with several organizations, several partnerships that we've had over the years. And so this matters not just, of course, for the industry, it matters to our clients as well. Our perspective in this is to continue to build that capacity. Number one, why does it matter to our clients? And of course to the customers. We want to serve our customers with insurance products, whether it's delivered through digital, whether it's delivered through traditional services, through microfinance institutions, whether it's delivered through banks and any other form of institution that we partner with. We want to deliver the right product for them. And then this leads to the second point. We want our clients to have a solid relationship. Trust is important. Without trust, without that relationship, our own clients, the business, the industry won't survive. So customer education is very important. We want to continue to deepen that understanding, and of course, when our customers understand what insurance is all about, the different products, being transparent about the pricing within how we deliver those products, it helps us to also manage the risk, not just for themselves, but also for us, for the institutions, the providers that we work with. This in itself is an important challenging task. And of course, finally,
Laurie, sorry to intervene, but you're fading in the middle. Can you please speak slightly louder, please? Thank you.
Is this better?
Yes, this is wonderful.
Okay, great.
Yes?
So finally, the last point I wanted to make on this slide was that technology, Pranav, you mentioned this earlier, technology is picking up faster than we probably think. Mobile banking is out there. And here, whereas before we were dealing with insurance through traditional providers, now we're dealing with technology and digital finance. So we want to anticipate this for our consumers, and we want to be prepared for it. There's an uncharted risk, but then there are also opportunities, and that's something that we continue to work for. This next slide is, again, for us, a framework that has been developed together with the Social Performance Task Force, with the SMART campaign. IFC has participated in these discussions, and we, through a selected number of projects, have piloted these indicators. We want to show to our clients why insurance is important, and these indicators are ways that we can track, we can monitor, we can give feedback to the board, to the management about whether the product is appropriate. Is it clear to them how this product is being used? Is the claims process clear? Is the complaint, if they're unhappy with the product, is the complaint process clear for them? All of this is important for us because we want to retain, we want to have a solid customer base, and this in itself we want to include as part of the risk management, not just for the institution, but also for the customers of our institution. So this is work in progress, and we continue to pilot and test and work with our clients to monitor and track and have some feedback into how we are delivering our products in insurance. So again, why is this important? The left column explains and it summarizes the challenges. Again, the awareness, poor perception of risk. Second is we want to increase uptake, clarifying roles, and of course, regulation, reinforcing the consumer protection and regulatory framework through our work with financial institutions so that we can deliver clearer products to our clients. So on the right side of the slide, these are, I think, our partners, panelists here will continue to discuss this in depth later on, but these are just various ways how we address the challenge. Partnering with a known brand to increase trust in the case of the first challenge, for example. Increasing uptake, we bundle them. We can deliver them through digital services, and also develop incentive models for voluntary insurance. Third, how can we pool the risks that are appropriate? How do we clarify this across the value? How can we clarify the value?
Sorry, Laurie, we are losing you again.
Hello?
Yeah, you're back, but this is perfect. Just carry on from wherever, this position, please. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. I think I need to pin the microphone closer. So, that's really, I really want to just conclude again. This is very important for us, and I'd like to pass this on now to Brenda.
Thanks. Thanks, Laurie. You've kind of set the groundwork and the framework on the importance of client education. But Brenda, you've been a part of the process where you've tried out a number of approaches and you've tried out a number of tools. But we'd like to understand what has been the thought process behind all these efforts. So if you could share that, your client base, etc., and why you chose these tools, it'll be great. Over to you, Brenda.
Thank you very much, Pranav. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the participants present here. I'm going to give a little perspective of the context within which we are working, and then share a little bit why we are doing consumer education, and then we'll continue with the rest of the examples of what we have done around that. So index insurance, as you know, is a very new concept, and clients need to receive accurate and complete information so that they don't end up having a realistic expectation, which of course will not be met. And if they are not met, then the trust in the product is eroded. So with that backdrop, and also with the backdrop of the kind of the potential clients for the product, who are mostly illiterate and semi-illiterate, and a lot of them have had very limited or no prior experience at all with insurance. It introduces a new challenge in the approaches that you're going to use for this particular venture. First of all, continuous education is important because this is not the kind of thing that you say one off and people remember. The kind of tools that you choose to use to communicate to this group is they need to be very easy to understand and tools or presented in a way that they can resonate with. Also, like I said earlier on, the approaches that you pick need to be acceptable, but more importantly, they need to be interesting to the clients, because if they are not interesting, then you lose them, and you're trying to send a message across, and people are not paying attention to what you're saying. With that in mind, we have, from the International Livestock Research Institute, supporting the commercial partners that we work with, we have worked a lot on developing several consumer education tools and approaches, and these have been adapted from season to season, mostly from following the experiences that we've had with the project, with the tools, and also from feedback that we have gotten from the intended users of the project. So with that in mind, we actually came up with, we proposed a theory of change around consumer education, or what then would happen for the products to have attained the objectives that were set. So first of all, there's been a lot of effort that has been put in training, developing the training materials and training of the communities, and then monitoring the same to ensure that the sales agents and the promoters are first of all knowledgeable on the product. But on top of being knowledgeable, they are also motivated to convey accurate information to the client. And if they are knowledgeable and conveying the right information, then actually will end up with realistic expectations of the product, which are likely to be met. And if their expectations are met, then their trust in index insurance is going to increase. And if they are trusting in the product, then they will purchase the product again and again. So we are going to have a renewal and also increased sales over time. So in a nutshell, that is how we have conceptualized this the process, and that is our objective or our end game. If we ended up with people, with the sales increasing and the renewals increasing, then we would have achieved the goal. So back to you, Pranav.
Thank you, Brenda. And at this moment, I'd like to ask Naveen that as a large player in this sector and as a kind of a market maker along with a couple of other organizations who took up the challenge of agriculture index insurance, what has your approach been? What has been the basic couple of things that you have looked at as you started out in this exercise? Over to you, Naveen.
Thanks, Pranav. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody wherever they are. I'll just try to explain why it is necessary to educate our customers. So let me take first few minutes in setting the context in Indian perspective from the socio-economic point of view for the farmer. India is basically a country of villages. So around 70% population lives in villages, where primary dependence is on agriculture. Around 52% of the workforce is dependent on agriculture. And only the average land holding of average farmer is around 1.2 hectares. So if you compare to global standard, it is very, very less. So on average, every farmer will have less than 2 hectares of the land. They will have one pair of cattle for their livelihood, and they will have one hut. If some well-off farmer will be there, they will have agriculture pump set or tractor for their farm. But every season, most of the farmers are dependent on bank or money lender for crop cultivations. And as you know, agriculture is a high-risk business, especially in India where the dependency on monsoon is very, very high. So here, suppose one season fails, they don't have anything to eat and money to pay back bank loan. So therefore, that's the reason if you see in India, in many of the states, when crop fail, the number of suicide increased multifold. So that kind of poverty the Indian farmers are. So that's the reason they should realize the importance of the insurance. But when you talk to the average farmer, because of the other day-to-day struggling, the insurance is last thing in their mind. That even if they have the money, they don't think that they should go for the insurance because they have never understood this product. They have never realized the benefit, that why it's important. And henceforth, at the time of compensation, if the governments try to settle the claims, if you see the last 3-4 season in India, if you have knowledge about the Indian agriculture industry, how it's going on, last 3-4 seasons this crop has failed miserably. Continuously 2 monsoon season and 1 Rabi season has failed miserably, and all the farmers are in utter distress. So when insurance companies started settling the claim, government has realized that hardly 15% of the farmers were covered under insurance. So that's the kind of level of penetrations we have, and the kind of compensation government settle. If they are not insured, government settle the compensation to the farmer. That is hardly 10% of the total input cost. So it is very, very important for the farmer to realize the benefit of the insurance. From the insurance company perspective, if you see, if the penetration is very, very less, the product will not be commercially viable. So for the product to be commercially viable and to be reasonably priced, a minimum level of critical mass need to be achieved. And that's the reason insurance companies should work on customer educations and pass on the information to all the stakeholders to realize the benefit. And if you look at, so how we can optimize the cost. The cost of distribution is very, very high if you try to reach in the rural market. So the optimum utilization of manpower and the use of technology is very, very important. So what we do, we are very fortunate in India, in ICICI Lombard, so we have a team which is set up for the health scheme also, for agricultural insurance scheme also. So, and this, all government schemes are very, very volatile. One state, one season, if you get the business, we are not sure that another season you are going to be there in that. So in terms of getting the tender, it's very, very volatile. So we have cross-functional teams who work for health insurance scheme also. If that scheme is not there for the next season, so then that same teams can be utilized for awareness programs and increasing engagement with the customers. So we have that benefit of that. So why? Just move on to the next slide. So we have realized that why it is very, very important. The objective mainly is to making the customer, making all stakeholders aware about the crop insurance, how to facilitate the better understanding of the NCIP program. The NCIP program is the government laid down the program. So how everybody can get the benefit of that. What are their role to play? The importance of insurance as a collateral security is also important to communicate it to them. So, and during this engagement process, we also get the feedback from the ground level, from all stakeholders, that how the scope of this entire scheme need to be improved, the scope of how the service benchmark which insurance companies providing need to be improved. So that's also sort of when we engage ourselves with the stakeholder, we get that feedback, and that helps us in improving our services. So there are various interventions levels which we'll talk about later. So how we identify that who are the stakeholders, and what are the programs we conduct, how we are conducting that program to make them more aware about that. So over to you, Pranav.
Thanks, Naveen. That lays a very good base, and since you've got some understanding of why it is important, and we've got a few more people who've signed in, I guess let's move on and do our second audience poll and try and understand from the audience what we feel is important and what should the consumer education topics address. We've also had a very good comment in the chat box about what all consumer education can cover. So can we please open the second poll and request the audience for their views on what topics should insurance consumer education address? Is it just product information? Is it information about claims and importance of it? Is it more generic information on risks and insurance principles, or various other alternatives rather than just focused on one product? Please go ahead and vote for one of these alternatives now. Yes, we'll keep it open for a couple of more seconds. Thank you. Can we please close the poll now? Thanks. So that's a very interesting area with almost 50% of us saying that information on risks and insurance principles is important and at a more generic level. And a lot of us also feel that the product information, what are the covers, what are the benefits, how much does it cost, is also important. And certainly you need to understand a bit more about the claims and what are the other alternatives. So that's interesting. And at this stage, I'd like to come back to you, Lori, with a very specific understanding. Now that we've understood that why it's required, and people have also said on what they want to listen about as in a consumer education program, is there a bouquet of services, or is there a process by which this entire process moves? So if you could just quickly take us through your understanding of this entire process. Over to you, Lori.
Thanks, Pranav.
Lori?
Can you hear me well?
We can hear you very well. Yes, we can hear you well.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I think the poll is quite consistent with what is it that we should be educating consumers today. So on the left, we'll see that there are several. Number one, there are several delivery channels that we can do this, and this is just to show, for us, it is really at the point of sale. All the other mass media, the workshops, the schools in general, these are alternatives, and I trust that both Naveen and Brenda will follow up with that on their presentations. But as Pranav mentioned, the journey of the customer in the insurance process is really needs more focus. And it is at the point of sale where we have the most influence, and it is a question of being clear on educating to increase the capacity to make the right decision, rather than just promoting the product, which is easier than the latter. So in choosing the product, as the poll said, we need to understand the risk. We need to explain to the consumer how will the insurance protect them from risk later. That what they buy now is the benefit is more than than the risk of not taking the insurance, and that the risk that they face because of it. So typically, when this is offered, it's mandatory. And here, the transparency, it's important to clarify to the farmer, when you're giving a loan, how much is this costing? And just be very clear that it's not, that they are going to get something that they paid for as part of it. In the entire journey, then, this is important, again, to build the trust for that provider, because if at some point the farmer doesn't get what they bought in the very beginning, again, it is a risk issue. Of course, then the process of making the application, is it easy? Is it simple? Can they make the claim when they really need it? Do they understand to renew the policy? So we saw that this was the least the least need for education, and I think that's more a reflection of the upfront work that we need to do in terms of the customer experience. So, so how can we do this? Again, we do this through diversified channels, educating at the local level, working with the officers, with the insurer, explaining how the product works, building capacity, especially for the local stakeholders, our local clients. And again, as mentioned earlier, if we can track the uptake, if we can track the use of insurance and feedback any complaints or delays in getting the claim or resolving the claim, we want to use it to improve the product and the development of the product. So offering this through diversified channels is really important, and the more we with our customers, the more educating about the risk method, about how they fit into the product, and about the coverage itself. So so this is the approach that we take.
Yeah. Thanks, Laurie. You actually mentioned a very important aspect around building trust in this entire thing, and I'd like to get Brenda in at this stage and see how all this has been practically done on the ground and understand from her on their approach and the issue around investing to build trust. So over to you, Brenda, to tell us about the various tools used by you. Brenda?
Thank you again, Pranav. Just to pick up on the comments from the poll, there's the fact that it is important to teach on the principles of insurance is definitely something that is given. But I think one of the reasons why the insurance companies don't take this up is because generic education is a public good. It's non-excludable. And these people are using their own finances to do this, and sometimes it's difficult to justify to their shareholders why they're doing it. And that perhaps begs the question that this should be a public good that should be offered by a public institution. Back to the consumer education approaches that have been used to help support or get people to understand the index-based livestock insurance products in Kenya and Ethiopia. Of course, first of all, we started with the usual face-to-face training where people were actually brought together and trained. But to address the issue of trust, as Pranav was talking about, the agents who are actually doing the training and who are branded as village insurance promoters were people that were selected from the communities, endorsed by the communities and the chiefs, and this helps to build the trust because people then were listening to this information for people they know and people that they could trust. There was also use of interactive radio programs. This allowed the listeners to call in and ask questions and seek clarity on the issues that they did not understand, and to make sure that the message was close to home. It was actually broadcasted on local radio stations and in local languages so that people could relate to the message a bit more, because the more foreign it is, the more likely they are to disengage. There were also, for consistency, some pre-recorded radio programs that were in local languages just to set the stage, and these pre-recorded radio messages were followed up with interactive radio programs. Another approach that was used is insurance games, simulation games. These were interesting games that were developed and based on a pastoral production system. And in these games, I'll talk about it a little more in some slides and show some pictures, but people were able to play within their own settings and simulate their experiences, which helps to make the product not very foreign. There were also some edutainment videos because some proponents in the education sector say that if something is said in a joke, people are more likely to remember than if it's just stated as a matter of fact. And so we developed these kits that were entertaining, but at the same time providing information on the product. And they were shown in the villages in the evening. People found them very interesting, and they were remembering the messages that were in this. Of course, the community, the pastoral community being a very oral community, there were so many community meetings that were held, and people got an opportunity to share and discuss. In the skits, local artists were used to bring the concept close to home so that people could understand. Of course, during the training, there was a use of village chiefs and the other community elders so as to just endorse the product and sort of like help the community to trust the product a bit more, particularly since these insurance companies did not have a presence on the ground. And so the fact that the chiefs were endorsing and backing the process helped them to find some reason to trust the information that they were being given. So I've seen a question in the chat that perhaps I'll address as I go on. The communities were endorsing these agents through, they were like focus group discussions, and some elders would come together and they would be asked to propose someone that they felt would be the right person to share this information, the village insurance promoters. And these village insurance promoters were brought to a central location and trained on the product, and they went back to explain the same to their constituents. The game I was talking about, the insurance simulation game, these ones were actually using the pastoral production system, where you actually trade a goat to purchase insurance, because these communities are also not very liquid, and so they need to be, they actually liquidate their assets when they need to invest in something. And so the communities, the people who played the game, they were able to understand the concept very well. We have a rigorous impact assessment around the program, and some of our studies were showing good understanding of the product that could be attributed to this. But these insurance simulation games were very resource intensive, both in terms of human resource and financial resources, and so it was not feasible to continue playing the games, and it was also not feasible to play the games with all the households in the area. And so there was also some evolutions in that to make it a role play and something that could be done with less resources. Also, village elders were very supportive in this, and they came out very effective. The master trainers and the village insurance promoters, I'll explain the difference. Master trainers were actually people that were from the community, but were educated, could understand insurance concepts well, could actually, if given like some insurance certification, they could be able to understand what it is. These people were brought together, trained on the product, and then they helped also in the process of recruiting the people we are calling village insurance promoters, who are a little more elderly and people who are trusted by the community. The master trainers trained the village insurance products on the product in their local languages, and the village insurance promoters were the ones who are then going to the community and explaining this product. Of course, going forward and helping in introducing some commercial aspects of this and to make it sustainable to the insurance companies, this use of village insurance promoters and master trainers has evolved to what they now call lead and sub-agent relationship. The lead agent is more or less the profile of a master trainer, who is somebody who is educated and can understand insurance concepts. They are brought together and trained. But now the profile of the sub-agent has changed a bit, in the sense that this is now a business person who can actually be licensed as an insurance provider, a shop owner, an agrovet, and people like those in the community, who is trained. And because they are present in the community throughout, of course they have trust because they are transacting in other businesses. And the fact that people can go back to them also reinforces the trust that people have in the product. And that is the model that is being currently used in the field, and it has proven successful because it has also increased the touch points for the community over there. So I'll just take you quickly through some graphical demonstration of the tools that have been used and how they have evolved going forward up to the year 2014. So in 2010 and later on in the subsequent slides, I'll just show some pictures of how these materials look like. It's difficult with technology. We would have run some videos, but we'll also just show basically the bigger picture of what is in the video. But by 2010, we started with a cartoon series that was explaining the product. There were pictures, but there was a lot of text in it. We also had a general video that was actually explaining the concept behind why this product was developed and why it is being presented as is. We had some posters that had information that were stuck around the area, and then of course there were the insurance simulation games. Like I said earlier on, from experience and from feedback that we received, we developed a quick reference guide, which is actually a summation of the key contract features that was given to the village insurance promoters and the master trainers to remind them of the product. We changed the video to an edutainment video so that it was a little entertaining as well as providing product information. We also developed a standardized training manual that would allow for the insurance companies also to be able to run these trainings without ILRI, who was actually a participating partner for the product. Consequently, we moved to pictorials. These pictorials are actually an improvement of the cartoon. The only difference is that they had a lot more pictures and less text, and also they were addressing some of the issues that had been raised from previously, like some of the cartoons looking like ghosts, to all other interesting comments that came from there. The quick reference was also updated, but also it was difficult to explain the concept of the index and to explain the outcome of the index, because the index is supposed to tell them when or not they are to be paid. And initially it was giving the predicted livestock mortality for the area, which was difficult to explain how the predicted mortality is 20%, and so you will receive a payout that is 20%, or if it is 50, no payout. So here we developed some color coding that would actually help the clients see exactly where they are in terms of the payments and when or not they should expect a payment. By 2014, there was actually now, because we realized that the clients will need some evidence from their peers. And so there was a payout video where peers were sharing their experiences they bought and how they felt about the product. There were also some jingles that were developed that were being shared on phone as files, and also they were being used by the insurance companies in their radio messaging. The tutorials were updated. There were some issue cards that helped the insurance agents to discuss different issues in the communities with some key areas to pick. There were some pocket guides, like a frequently asked questions, and the frequently asked questions was actually just scripting some of the answers, because we also realized that different people had different understandings of the product based on who told them or who taught them. And so scripting of the answers for some of the frequently asked questions was going to help in standardizing the messages that were going across in an effort to minimize some of the wrong messages that were being said by some of the agents not understanding the product. Then of course there were rate cards that were helping the insurance agents to be able to know what the prices were for the different, to insure different animals, because some of them were actually like getting confused while calculating this, and so it became very easy for them even to tell the clients exactly what the price is, because the experience was the clients wanted to know what the premium that they would pay in terms of, in monetary terms, and not as a percentage of the sum insured. And so the rate cards were able to help the clients do this easily. So next, I'm just showing some a graphical demonstration of some of the things I've been talking about. The first one on the top left is actually the cartoon. As you will see, yes, it's a cartoon, but there's a lot of text, which means that it was blocking out the illiterate members of the community. They were not able to follow. The one on the bottom left is the entertainment video. As you can see, these are guys trying to beg because they lost their animals and now they are looking for other ways before they realize that insurance is the way they should go. And then on the right is the poster that we use for announcing the index. So as you can see up there, there's a legend that defines what each color is, and this information is also shared by the agents earlier on in the season. And now the pastoralists can just look at the colors down there and tell when, so they know that if it's black, things are really bad, there's a payout. If it's red, things are really bad, but it did not go below the threshold for payment, so no payout. If it's green, things are very good, and the like. In the next one, this is now how the materials evolve. You will see on the left that the pictorial is actually minimal text. It actually shows what is covered and what is not covered. There's the bare ground with some skeletons, which means that these animals have died because of lack of forage, and it shows the insurance company you should go to. It shows also if your animals are predated on. This is not covered, but you can also visit the Kenya Wildlife Services, which is responsible for compensating people whose animals have been predated on. There's also dead sick animals with a vet there treating them, and this is not covered. There's the Kenya Veterinary Board. You can seek services of a vet to prevent your animals from dying. The last one is on banditry. Some people are there trying to steal these cows. This is also not covered by the contract. The Kenya Police is responsible to send this to that. And then also, since this ones were a bit smaller, we did some other smaller posters, as you can see on the right. This one is a poster that is printed A0. It actually explains the entire product and the features that are there, but in mostly pictorial and in a very summarized way, such that even some illiterate people just looking at this poster and following the sequence of the pictures can be able to tell what the product is about. These are some of the materials that were given to the sales agents. The one on the extreme left is the quick reference guide I was talking about that has the key contract features. It is printed very small, A6, so that they can actually put it in the pocket and take it around. This is the part manual that we developed to assist in the training, and the one on the right is the frequently asked questions that I talked about earlier, to script some of the responses to make sure that people are answering the thing. In 2015, there was a couple of other new tools and approaches that came about, and later on in the implementation I'll explain also why this grew like that. First of all, there was a case study for Italy, and this one is not so much for the client, but this is an MBA type case study, a teaching case study that will help people that are developing insurances, that will help people that are going to get into this space to understand what the challenges are and how they can go about the process. There was also a development of e-learning materials to help the agents, the insurance company sales agents, and extension workers from government to be able to understand the product and be able to self-teach without requiring the support from every or the insurance company, since this is very expensive. And this e-learning materials, they start teaching this concept right from the principles of insurance. What is insurance? And then they zero in on the product-specific features. We also developed an M-learning application that reinforces the messages that people have been taught, and people are able to receive these messages. The agents on the ground can be able to read, to go through these messages and reinforce the information that they have, and they can go back to confirm some of the things that they don't have. Closely related to that is that we started to work on something that's called gamification. I'll talk about that in the next slide. But also, the clients were starting to understand how exactly does this process work. So we say that you're using satellites to observe the forage availability, and then from that you're able to tell whether there's a payout. And so we developed this Ibli percentile calculator that will help the clients to see that the information that is collected, the consistency of the information that is collected, how NDVI data is collected, how it is inputted, and how it is translated to show whether they are real or will not be a payout. This percentile calculator also allows them to go back to previous seasons and see what the season's experiences were and compare them to what they knew, and this helps to sort of like endorse or sort of remind them or confirm to them that the messages and the information as was provided was the same. But this easy percentile calculator also is a way of them receiving information on what the status for the current season is, because once the insurance company has announced the status of the index, people can go back to the calculator and it's time for them to see how the people is going forward. I wanted to talk a little bit more about gamification, because gamification is where, as you can see there on the left, we have what we are calling Pocket Easy, which is actually the mobile learning application that we have. Within this, people were receiving modules to be able to remind themselves of specific aspects of the product or features of the product, and then they were required to take a small quiz that will show whether they've understood and whether they remember. But to encourage them to read the modules and to take the quizzes, we use something we call gamification, where you use some game approach to incentivize people to continue. So you develop some incentives around there, like for example, you can have badges, and people receive badges that show them like you have answered 5 questions, so you're at level 1 or you're at level 2 and stuff like that. And people are getting into this kind of approach and they get incentivized to continue. They also use something we call Leaderboard, where there is some sort of competition, so people are reading this, answering these questions, and we want to see how they compare with the others. So this has been tested, and we will see the lead agents were actually going for this. They worked on this, they answered questions, we are currently looking at the data to see how well they perform, and then we will match their performance here and their understanding of the product with their sales, and further with the renewals, or how the client will be after the end of the same period, to see whether reinforced information can then get people to provide the right information, which will make the client understand the product better and be able to continue on with the project. So, like I mentioned earlier on, there's a reason why in 2015 a lot of other materials were mentioned. That is because based on successes that the index-based livestock insurance product had from inception, that is in 2010, and the subsequent years, and based on the demonstrated very positive welfare benefits of the product to the community, the Kenya government and the World Bank collaborated with ILRI to work on, to develop, launch and implement what is called the Kenya Livestock Insurance Program, which actually is more or less the same as ILRI. It's exactly the same, but here the Kenya government is providing this insurance for some very poor households in an effort to catalyze the market, to get a bigger group of people exposed to the product, so that they can be able to, have some experiences with the product, and other people can see from them to catalyze a bigger group of people participating. So around that, we developed a consumer a strategy that would help in getting this information cascaded down. So first of all, we developed some tools for the government and the insurance industry and policy makers around index insurance, and in particular livestock insurance, so as to make sure that also the policy environment was one that would allow this kind of product to thrive. At the second level, we were able to develop some job aids and some materials for the sales agents and the promoters. And in this instance, since the government had come in, livestock extension officers became another natural set of people that would help in cascading this information to the client as they interface with them in their regular work. And then last but not least, of course, was to create another suite of materials that would help in raising the awareness of potential clients and to make sure that these people were actually understanding how the product works. So I'll just go back to mention one thing. There's a lot of innovations that have gone around this product. We have tried our best. Of course, there are a lot of setbacks that we need in the different approaches and materials that we develop. but we see this as an opportunity to do even better, and we keep modifying this material. One other approach that I perhaps failed to mention earlier on, and I'll just go back to it in a moment, is that having worked like this, and with the successes and the challenges that were there, we thought to find out that perhaps the community had another way that they thought or believed would be the best way to reach them with these messages. And to this end, we launched what we called innovation challenge, where we actually asked the community members to come up with innovative ideas on how consumer education could be carried out, both in terms of the methodology and the material. And there were some prizes to be won around that. It was a very interesting process, and interesting ideas came up that we are also going to try. So there has been a lot of effort in trying to make sure that the materials and the messages and the way they are packaged is in a way that is resonating with the intended client. So thank you very much. Back to you, Pranav.
Thank you, Brenda. You've really shared a lot of tools and all the efforts that has gone behind it. And before I give it to Naveen to actually talk about how practically these tools have been implemented on the ground and the role for the government in this, we'd quickly do a final poll with our audience to try and understand how they've used their media and what they feel are the views on these various tools. So can we quickly have the audience poll number 3, which actually asks you to vote on what are the most effective ways to engage with rural agriculture households on insurance awareness and education. We've heard of community leaders and village chiefs and cooperatives. Would they make sense? Would agriculture input providers from whom farmers buy seeds and fertilizers, would they be good to educate the customers? Is mass media the right way to go about it, because we've heard of radio and other local issues? Or would mobile phones, which is fast emerging as a channel for everything, would they be a logical medium to be used for client education, customer education purposes with rural agriculture households? Can we have your views, please, on these? Thank you. We are about to close the poll now, so please let us have your views. Yeah, great. Thank you. Can we please close the poll now? Thank you. So overwhelmingly, it seems that communities, your own cooperative organizations, farmer groups, they are a very interesting way of communicating with rural households. But as Naveen mentioned, there are various levels of stakeholders and various players in the entire process. And Naveen, you've been working a lot with the government and using them, or rather they have been pushing you to carry out the activities there and providing a lot of support for us. So what are the various channels and what are the various mechanisms that you deal with? If you can quickly share how these tools are shared on the ground level. Thanks. Over to you, Naveen.
Yeah, thanks, Pranav. Sure, Pranav. So here we have realized that why it is very, very important for the benefits to reach to the farmer. But we will have to realize that it will not only help if we will educate the farmer. So there are various levels of stakeholders who is completely involved in terms of reaching out the benefit of insurance to the farmer. So since government has mandated this scheme, but to implement this scheme, there are various levels. So first, state level has to issue the notification and provide the benefit of different types of crop. Then there are implementers at the district level from the administrative side. You have a state level banking committee, then district level bank, and then finally farmer. When we talked about the farmer, there is a good amount of the farmer community and the opinion makers whom we need to take on the board before we reach out to the beneficiary. So every level we have the engagement program for each and every level. So even if the farmer is educated, any of the any of the stakeholder is not supportive, will not help you getting the benefit to the farmer. So every stakeholder need to be on board before we implement this scheme. So we'll see that what are the different level of engagement and what actually communicate to every at every level. So when we conduct the program, when we conduct the programs, we have arranged a workshop sort of thing, which is called Hari Turan at a state level and also at the district level. In this Hari Turan, normally we invite the district level administrator, the banks, all the banks who is operating in that area, and some representative from the farmer community. So here mainly we focus on our presentation that why insurance is important to them, what are the roles the bank has to play in terms of providing the benefit to the farmer, what are the product features, how the product will work, and how the bank has to convince the individual farmer. If they come to the bank, take the loan, so what are the things they need to explain to the farmer so that farmer will be convinced. Though by nature of this scheme, this is a mandatory product for the farmer. But in case if the farmer is resistant, and lot many farmers, if they oppose to the bank that they don't want to participate in this scheme, the bank can't force those farmers to come on board. So it is very, very important to convince the farmer about the benefit of this scheme. So that in this workshop, we also explain that what are the amounts they need to pay and how the government will subsidize on behalf of them. So when the farmer realize that almost 50 to 70% of the premium will be communicated by the government, they feel happy and they feel like they should participate under this scheme. Then in this workshop, we also give some kind of reward or recognitions to the bank who has helped us in achieving maximum number of penetrations. So you can see the different kind of work. So this workshop is also conducted at the district level, where we where we ask people from the farmer community and come there. There we explain about the product features. In the course of, we make sure that in past season, if some of the farmers who have got benefited, we ask them to explain that how they got benefited from this scheme. Earlier, what used to happen, we used to settle the claim through check. Previously, it was not mandated that all the claims has to be settled through electronic mode. So we used to conduct a check distribution fair. So then the other farmers used to realize that, okay, the farmer is getting benefit. Then they used to build up that trust. Now all the amount is getting transferred to the farmer accounts. We can't hand over them to the check. So we ask all those farmers to stand up and explain that suppose if they have taken the insurance product, how they have got benefited. So that helps other farmers to get convinced about the benefit of the scheme. So that is very, very important. So you can see that at different level, we try to put all the banners and all the posters at the most prominent place at the village in the localized language, so that they can come and read and they can understand the benefit of the scheme. Also at the community levels, we put our people so that if some farmer want to reach out to them, want to understand the benefit of the scheme, that person can explain it to them. So some of the areas, if you see, you will find it very, very difficult to reach, especially in India. So there, normally the vehicle can't go. So there we arrange people who advertise about the schemes on handheld mic device. We invite people at the village panchayat level, the sarpanch, the head of the villages, to we explain them, we ask them to explain about the benefit in their local language. We use the benefit of some festival, like kite festival in some of the part of in India is very, very prominent. So there we print the benefit of the schemes on kite and distribute among the farmer or to their children. We also use mobile van campaigns in some of the area where it is easy to take the vehicle. So there we use mobile van campaigns. So these are all the activities to reach out to the maximum number of people about so that they will be aware about the benefit of this scheme. So in India, in the festival time, if you look at, lots of crowds go to Pandal. The Pandal, we say that we make a very, very huge arrangement for worship and puja. So there we make the arrangement for Nukkar Natak and drama, who through the drama and skit play, they communicate the benefit of the scheme to the farmer. So large amount of populations, they go visit these things, and they can't avoid this skit and drama, so they used to watch. And then they realize the benefit, that through instance how they can get benefited. We also use local radio jingles.
Why don't you leave a voice or fax message after the tone?
So we always put the radio jingle, so that is also a mass media communication through which we reach it to the individual farmer. Other practices that we have set up a tablet-based enrollment arrangement at individual village level, so that if the farmer is interested to reach out, they can go with the valid documents. They can give the documents, give their all the necessary information, and can get themselves enrolled as a non-loan farmer. So all these things had helped us in getting the benefits. You can see that in one of the states, in a district, in 2-3 districts, we were implementing MNIS and WBCIS scheme. Last year also we operated in district for the same crop. Through this all information and education communications, we realized that in the same district for the same kind of crop compared to last year, almost 224% growth has come in WBCIS scheme. WBCIS is weather-based scheme, and almost 100% growth which had come for MNIS scheme, which is yield insurance scheme. So we have realized that this kind of activity gave us huge benefits. There is still a lot more to do, which we are currently working on for this season, and we feel that we will get a huge benefit out of this. Thanks, Pranam. Over to you, Pranam.
Thanks, Naveen, and for sharing all these ground level implementation activities and how they've been done. But there's a certain issue around it on how sustainable is it, and Brenda mentioned that it's a cost and as a public good. So there's a big issue around how consumer education and costs around it should be treated. Is it a cost or is it an investment? Laurie, we've also had a question from Tom Shaw asking on how to do it cost effectively. Would you have something to share with us on your viewpoint on this cost versus investment issue for customer education? How do you view it? How has the entire GIF proposition dealt with it? If you could quickly share with us one example of how GIF does the entire program.
Thanks, Pranav. That is a really key question for us. And as I mentioned earlier, so at the World Bank, particularly through GIF, the Global Index Insurance Facility, under that we heard Brenda speak of her experience, and this is one of the projects underneath it. Our approach really is incentivizing the clients that we work on insurance, incentivizing and in helping them to innovate in the way that Brenda and also Navin has shown earlier. So this framework here, again, came out of our work with the industry. We track those indicators as much as possible. We want the education to be localized, to be tailored, to be diversified. And finally, we want to assess the lessons from each of those areas. That process helps us to get a finger on, is this cost effective? Looking at the different ratios relative to the GIF projects, because GIF helps to bridge the cost so that at some point during this pilot, during this program, we can see the benefits that would come out from the impact and the evaluation of the program.
Okay, so you actually kind of extract the lessons and then share them so that it becomes a kind of a public good and others can learn by examples, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, thanks. So, yeah, so at this stage, actually, I'd like to just, before throwing it open for questions, and we are getting a lot of questions, so I think we should save some time to get to them. I'd just like to kind of get your inputs on concluding thoughts on what it is, and we'll come back to this framework on how it can be done during question and answers. So any last thoughts that you want to share before I kind of start taking questions and request you to comment on them? So Laurie, your views first on what you feel is the need of the hour.
So thanks again, Pranav. I think trust, number one, second, and tailored. And this is something where a lot of work is continues, and it's great to see what Brenda and Naveen are doing. But also that at the larger level, this is a big agenda for the World Bank, for the G20, GPFI, and GIF is part of that whole process.
Okay, thanks a lot. Brenda, over to you. What do you feel is the importance of consumer education and trust?
So basically, first of all, consumers need to get the accurate, but not just accurate, but complete information. And complete means different things from other people, for different people. For some people, it's from, first of all, understanding insurance itself to understanding the particular offering of that particular product. This helps them to actually have realistic expectations of that offering. And with realistic expectations and them being met, it's going to definitely help in building trust.
Okay, so trust reinforcement is the mantra for you. Naveen, what's your guiding light for consumer education?
Yeah, I completely agree that trust is absolutely necessary for the farmer, because those communities, it's very hard to build up the trust unless they realize the benefit. Hence, it is very, very important to translate and communicate the proper information and educations about insurance, and not only to the farmer, at all level with all the stakeholders. So we'll have to completely engage with all the stakeholders to make them completely aware about the scheme to realize the full benefits to the farmers. That's my thought.
Okay, that sounds good. So we are talking about trust, we are talking about all levels, we are not just talking about one person, the end user, and we are talking about an array of tools and an array of on-ground implementation experiences which can then dovetail into the framework that the World Bank has developed, and that can be evaluated over a period of time as to the benefits that the farmers got and how much they understood. So on this note, I'll just open the floor for a couple of quick questions and share some of the questions that we've been getting and request our panelists to respond to it. And to the audience at large, we'll just take a couple of questions now. We will share all your questions later with the panelists and get responses from them and share with you as quickly as possible. But on this online platform, we'll just take a few of them. So please don't think that we are ignoring questions. We'll certainly get back to you as it starts. So Brenda, there's actually a question for you from Cheryl. You had responded to a question earlier from her on the endorsement of the agents by the communities, but Cheryl also wants to kind of understand from you if you have an example of a difficult concept that you were explained through the pastoral system. So how did the pastoral system help in explaining a concept, an abstract concept or a difficult concept? Any example that you could share? Over to you, Brenda.
Thank you very much, Pranav. So one difficult concept that was explained through the pastoral production system in the game was the concept of average and the concept of index and how the payments are determined. Since pastoralists grade their animals together, we would give them like little chips to represent animals, 10 for each one of them, and then they would pick a card that would predict the experiences of that particular season. And if it was such that it is below the trigger level, which means it's triggering payment, then we would collect, say, if it's say 60%, we would collect 6 of the live animal cards that we give these people, give them 6 dead ones, put these animals together by shuffling the cards together, which is the fact that they actually grade their animals together, and then redistribute randomly these 10 cards to the people. And different people will end up with somewhat different experiences, but majority of them would end up with 6 dead cards and 6 live ones. So it helps to explain the fact that the index is actually measuring the experiences of a geographical area, and some people, even the concept of basic risk, some people might be slightly above average and slightly below average, but in general, everybody's experiences will be the same.
Okay, so that's interesting how you dealt with averaging and explaining that concept there. We also have a question from Tom Shaw for you, Brenda, which actually asks if your videos and games are shareable. I'm sure your videos are, so we can share the links to the videos that are there, and we'll certainly share that with Tom if that's okay with you.
Yes, it's okay. All the materials developed by ILRI are for global public use. So yes, they can be shared.
Okay. Tom has also asked about the cost effectiveness, and we just heard Lori giving a framework on how it's worked in the GIF platform. But I'll just take the concept slightly further and Lori, request your views on, if you are to kind of summarize lessons learned from some of the projects that you've been doing, what would those lessons be on this entire slightly broader framework of financial education, and of course with a focus on insurance? So if you could share some of those lessons for the audience, it will be great. Lori?
Yes, thanks, Pranav. Again, I think the lessons, so this slide here shows a survey that we had actually done a couple of years back. It wasn't just India, it was a global survey. And the lessons, the experience from Brenda and Naveen really just resonate. And number one, that it's broad-based, it's appropriate, it's very localized, it's very to build that trust that we've heard several times here, and that it is tailored. There's a balance on the size of the program. It's here we're dealing with, if we're dealing with livestock, it was great to see the examples that Brenda showed, different workshops, different approaches, and likewise with Naveen, with the model coming at a more national government level, working at different levels down to the district. Using technology, mass media, this is a day-to-day way that people communicate, so that it's easy to pick up. But still, it needs to be tailored, and we saw this in the cartoons that Brenda had explained earlier. So again, down to cost. There is still very little evidence, and that is why GIST is very is out there. This is why the World Bank is still working to scale this up. we can't do this alone. We're working with several organizations at multiple levels because this has to be a comprehensive approach. And financial education, consumer protection is a multi approach. So so there is no holy grail answer to the cost. Is really the bottom line. But I like our perspective as much as possible is we want to make this an investment at some point, not just for the providers, but then to make it more of a benefit and a value add at the end of the day. So no matter what, I think you always have that tension between cost and investment and the benefit.
Okay. So now with all these, so Laurie, just before to round off, I'll just request you for one more input. And with all these changes that are happening and this cost factor coming in, how's the global spread? Is there a global drive to take us through consumer education? Is it becoming a larger public good issue, as we've all been mentioning, rather than just proprietary information of an organization working for profits? You have something to share with us on that? I see the slide on the screen now. If you could just take us quickly through the slide.
Yes, yes. Yeah, really the point of this slide is that there is a greater number of public initiatives around this. There's, I mentioned earlier, the G20, the Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion. There's a Maya Declaration. Over 90 countries have signed up to, including India here and of course Kenya, to develop national financial inclusion frameworks, and financial education is at the heart of that. And a lot of that I think has come out from the surveys, the projects, the initiatives that we've seen today. So and we heard Brenda, we will share the tools that are coming out.
Okay, wonderful. So consumer education seems to be growing in importance, and I'd like to thank the panelists for sharing their views, experiences, tools, frameworks, and implementation experiences, not only on the ground, but across various players in the value chain. We heard of the importance of a relevant distribution channel. We heard of consumer education being used as a reverse entry mechanism, also call it a two-way street, which can help in collecting feedback, and that input could go into better products being developed, relevant channels being chosen, expansion of services, and new customer targets opening up. So I guess, as we very rightly understood, it's still a beginning and there's still a long way to go, and the idea is to do it in a manner that it's beneficial at all levels, not only for the customers, but also for the providers, and it's a win-win situation at the end of it all. Unfortunately, I'd like to close the session here because of the time issues. We've slightly overrun, but we've heard some very interesting inputs. So, and thank the audience for its responses, the questions, and all the issues that they've raised on the chat box. We'll be going through them and responding to them on a lot of these issues, and also getting our panelists' views and experts' views on this. So thank you very much for your participation and inputs. And I'd like to also thank both the World Bank Group's Global Index Insurance Facility, as well as USAID supported Global Action Network for this knowledge sharing opportunity. And we look forward to hearing more on this interesting aspect of doing correct and relevant customer education over a period of time, so that the entire benefits of insurance can actually be understood and gained by hitherto excluded masses and the rural and agriculture sector. So thank you all once again, and we look forward to sharing more views on our next webinar. Please look out for our dates as we go forward on this. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pranav. Thanks, Laurie. Thanks, Brenda.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you all, and we look forward to meeting again shortly.